There's a common phrase that encourages people to think locally, act globally. For Bob Rauschenberg, that meant using his art as an olive branch to other cultures. As we continue our celebration of 100 years of the artist, WGCU's arts reporter Tom Hall shows us how Rauschenberg fostered creative dialogue in countries where artistic expression had been suppressed.
In 1984, Robert Rauschenberg was at the height of his fame.
Rauschenberg was not a giant of American art, he was the giant of American art, and I would argue most important artist of the second half of the 20th century.
Jay Dellinger with the Bob Rauschenberg Gallery says the artist decided to use his celebrity to take art to places where artistic expression had been suppressed. So in 1982, he made a trip to China to work with the Shan papermakers in Anhui province. That collaboration resulted in one of his most iconic artworks, a 100-foot-long print called Chinese Summer Hall. And that was a springboard for trips to a dozen other countries.
For Bob, he had always envisioned making a kind of peace mission, traveling the world and going to places, frankly, where there were dictators and authoritarian regimes, where it was difficult for Americans to travel to, because he believed in one-on-one communication with people.
He named this initiative the Rauschenberg Overseas Cultural Interchange, or ROCKY. Between 1985 and 1990, he traveled to Mexico, Chile, Venezuela, China, Tibet, Japan, Cuba, the Soviet Union, Germany, and Malaysia. ROCKY wouldn't have happened without Donald Saff. The former director of Graphic Studio at the University of South Florida made all the arrangements for these trips and oversaw the production of the multiples the artist created upon his return. Rauschenberg had been introduced to Saff by a friend and fellow artist, Jim Rosenquist.
Rosenquist first came to Florida at the invitation of Graphic Studio in around 1970, at the beginning of Graphic Studio, and he had this sort of tragedy, which was he had brought his family, his very young son and his wife, and they got in a car wreck in Tampa. And they ended up in the hospital for an extended period in ICU. Bob, hearing that his family members, his wife and son, were in the ICU, came up from Captiva to visit.
At the time, Rauschenberg was just beginning to experiment with printmaking. He had a small studio next to his beach house. It paled in comparison to Graphic Studio.
They had all these printmaking facilities, and they would give him as expansive a studio environment as he cared to work within. So he came to Graphic Studio, started making editions in 1972, and then through the entirety of his life, he made work really connecting with Don Saff and or with Graphic Studio.
This strategic partnership culminated in some of the greatest artworks of the last half of the 20th century. His Made in Tampa series of clay works, hundreds of lithographs, and scores of solvent transfer prints. This work helped cement Rauschenberg's reputation as the preeminent global artist of his time and tethered him to Southwest Florida, where he had everything he needed to make great art and create a lasting legacy.
One of the things that I think kept him in Florida was having this deep relationship not only with us, but also with the University of South Florida.
For WGCU News, I'm Tom Hall.
Thanks for watching. We've got more great content for you, from news to the arts to the environment. So be sure to like and subscribe to WGCU's YouTube channel and follow us on our social media platforms for the stories that matter to you.